As a DM, do you find that encounters don't really go the way you planned? Either the player characters mow down this big bad enemy you've put in front of them, or it goes in the other direction. You wanted kind of an easy encounter for your characters, but oh no, two of them are down and failing death saves. What can you do about it? Well, that's what this video is about. I'm Dave.
And I'm Ryan.
This is the one and only RPG Rundown, and this video is Managing Encounters. Today in the studio, Ryan is my guest.
How's it going?
And we're going to talk about a couple of things that can help you out with these problems. One is paying attention to the adventuring day, something people talk a lot about without saying what it is. We're going to tell you what it is and how you can handle it. And then also the action economy in 5th edition is really important. We'll get into what that is when we cover the action economy, just what that is as well. Let's talk about the adventuring day. If you look in the Dungeon Master's Guide, it gives advice about the adventuring day. And in that section in the DMG, it's going to tell you that you should hit your players with 6 to 8 medium to hard encounters per day. And it's got a system that breaks down XP per encounter in a somewhat crunchy and complicated way to arrive at what is a medium or hard encounter. That is, by the way, part of the problem with it. It's a little crunchy and hard to work with. Another problem with the adventuring day idea is that it was originally designed for dungeon crawls, where it's not so easy for characters to just stop and take a long rest and decide, oh, we're going to sit here for 12 hours for the rest of the day. We'll take our long rest. We'll re-up. It's kind of easy to do that.
Yeah, which, now these days, it's not so much a dungeon crawl as open world and trying to build everything around that open world and the encounters you run into with that. And honestly, I think 6 to 8 seems like a lot of encounters. It seems like a lot of really difficult encounters. But coming from a player side, a lot of that is what I'm used to running into with my DMs.
Right. And that's because this adventuring day is about resource management. It is about the spell slots that you have, about the healing magic that you still have during an adventuring day. And it is meant to push you. It is meant to challenge you. By the end of the adventuring day, you should start feeling like, oh, man, my hit points are very low. Next encounter, I could die. Or I'm out of my spells. I don't know what else to do. Cleric runs out of healing spells. That's a problem. So basically, it takes more work in an open environment to challenge players not to just have one battle, take a long rest, have one battle, take a long rest. Theoretically, the adventure could go on for weeks and weeks as they slowly grind away, which kind of hints at one of the things we'll talk about what you can do, but we'll get to that. Matt Colville has written his own system in his book Flee Mortals, which is his monster manual. And he's got a different approach that makes it a little bit easier to calculate what's a medium encounter, what's a hard encounter. And it's also not based on average party level, but it's still a little easier to figure out. And he's got a different number of them that he'll throw at players per day. So that's something worth checking out if you're interested. Flee Mortals has a lot of great useful monsters in it. It's also got this little section on the adventuring day, which is really helpful. The gist of this is it's still hard to get right. Given all these tools we have, it can be tough to get right. And what's helpful is to think about specific things you can do that aren't necessarily about balancing the encounter and doing all this math and, difficult calculations on paper in your head or whatever. And one easy thing you can do is if a party is traveling, this is what random encounters are for. In part, not just to make things variable and fun and unpredictable, but that unpredictability also has to do with your resource management. You expected maybe a certain number of things to happen during the day walking from here to here, but you came upon brigands. Oh no, are you ready? Well, find out. That's what's exciting, right?
Right, exactly. Random encounters don't necessarily have to be super difficult. That's what's nice about them. There's a nice kind of little palate cleansers for some of the more difficult battles you'll run into. And they may not be super resource draining, but you are still making it a little bit more deadly by the end of the day. Because that's what we're looking at. It's the entire adventuring day. So the 24 hours between long rest and long rest.
On a similar note, I think a lot of DMs, maybe I'm only speaking for me, so I'll speak for me. I'm often reluctant to mess with player characters' long rests and short rests, and I don't know why, because I'm a pretty dastardly DM in other ways. I don't know what it is. It just feels unfair because I could do it at any time. But doing it once in a while is not a bad thing because, again, it messes with that resource management economy. It throws a little curveball into that, and that changeup can be exciting. I mean, even as a player, I think if every long rest goes fine, no one ever ambushes you, no one ever sneaks up on your party at their weak point, like how challenging is that really?
Right. I mean, it's unlikely that a lot of your long rests will go unimpeded. And you should really expect to be messed with during your long rest. It's not like it's going to be an easy thing. You're going to run into bandits and brigands and wild boars, things like that. It's not going to be that crazy of an idea during your long rest, especially when you're out in the wild. So when you add these little things in, it does still drain your party and makes it a little bit more realistic for them.
That's true. And you can also nickel dime the party a little bit by throwing one or two in there. And after a while, it starts to feel like, hey, where are we? It's like when I try to put down Magic the Gathering Arena. Just one more. Just one more. And they all sneak up on me. And before you know it, I've frittered away my entire morning. Yeah, that's a good point about story realism, too. These are some great scenes from like the Lord of the Rings movies. People think they're safe. They think they're sleeping. Maybe they catch something, the wind changes, something's wrong. It can be fun. It can actually be fun for the party. Short rests, too, I don't think about messing with a lot, but that's another fun thing to do. The party plans out their amount of resources they can get to before short rest and like, all right, let's take one. Ha-ha! Now what? For a party to get into a little bit of that uncanny valley is also a realistic thing. If you come to be able to predict how easy every day is going to go, I actually think that's boring for the players.
I would agree with that as a player.
Another thing you can do is throw in unpredictable environmental effects. Cold could cause checks for exhaustion. I don't know, lightning from the skies.
Hail, rain.
Hail and rain. There you go. Yeah, so the environment can also pose a challenge. It's not always just monsters.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many environmental effects that have an effect on us as human beings in general. Why not use those in your game? Extreme colds, extreme heats are two really easy ones to throw in anything. If you're running around next to a volcano, of course you're going to be sweating in heavy armor, head to toe, and going to be exhausted a lot faster than anything else.
And even though I mentioned that the core rules approach to the adventuring day is intended for dungeon crawls and works best there, even when dealing with a dungeon, you do need to make sure that you take advantage of that by making the dungeon environment challenge the players a little. Make it tough to barricade a room. Pay attention to where you put locked doors in your dungeons. Sure, maybe the enemy locks doors, but have you made it really easy for the party to go from chamber to chamber, barricade themselves in, and take a rest? What can you do about that? Random patrols is one thing. If you look at classic D&D adventure modules, that's pretty typical for creatures like goblins or kobolds. They don't all just knot together in one little cave waiting for the whole party to come in. Generally, they've got roving patrols. That's going to make it difficult to take a long rest, even if you do barricade, actually.
Right. And I mean, while you're in the caves and dungeons like that, don't be afraid to use, again, these environmental effects where you can change the environment, start having stalagmites or stalactites, whichever the one falls from the top.
I have a mnemonic device for our viewers. Stalagmite has the M, and the M looks like stalagmites.
Oh, all right.
That's how I remember.
Yeah, for some reason, I know they're one or the other.
Right. When you have the high ground and your enemy is in the lava.
Right, yeah. And on fire.
Another one. That's another one.
You can use the environmental effects to adjust how the ground and the terrain is. So making more difficult terrain, having things fall around, making your players also use dexterity checks and agility checks to avoid these obstacles while also in battle. I think that makes for a more dynamic battle.
And, when it comes to patrols and environmental dangers like this, like falling stalactites or fire, remember that you can put a bunch of it in there and pull back. You can adjust this and tweak it as your characters go through the dungeon. Remember, your players don't know what they're in for. They don't know that you removed 10 of these because they were about to die. But if they're not about to die and they're super healthy and you want the next encounter to be challenging, you leave in the falling stalactites.
Yeah.
They're adjustable. So the other thing you would have to contend with is the action economy. And people talk a lot, just like they do about the adventuring day. You'll see people in YouTube comments and in forums talking also about action economy. It's very important. They rarely say exactly what it is. Really, exactly what it is this: the number of actions the enemy can take versus the number of actions the players can take. And really, when you get down to it, it's the damage output per round. So you might have a CR5 monster go up by themselves against a party of 4 5th level player characters. The player characters are probably going to win that fight really easily for the simple reason that, well, you got 2 attacks at 5th level, I think. I'm just imagining fighters randomly, not really what a real party would be like, but for the sake of argument, that's 8 attacks. The monster probably doesn't have that many attacks.
No.
Not at a CR5.
Not likely.
So that's one big thing to look out for. Solo big bads do not do well because of the action economy. This is why, in fact, higher level creatures have legendary actions and lair actions that let them do additional things outside of their own turn. This just makes them more challenging against a party of players. Although, I still wouldn't advise having a solo big bad go up against a party even at 10th level or above, because the action economy is still going to favor the players.
The players have more actions per turn than your one big bad. So, in a battle of who can hit the most times, which is what most combats are, the players are going to win. So,
and in fact, I will go out on a limb and say, on record here today, D&D 5th edition, and I don't mean this as a criticism, it is designed to favor the players more than any other edition that we have seen. That's a good thing. Players want to feel like they're heroic and they accomplish things, but it does mean when it comes time to challenge them, it's up to you as a DM, like so many other things in 5th edition. It's up to you as a DM to make decisions and come up with things that the rules don't exactly tell you how to do to challenge those players. By default, the safety is kind of on.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the things I've noticed in a lot of the campaigns I've played is the safety is always on. As much as it is great to see players go down, it sometimes doesn't feel like there's a real consequence to that player going down.
Right. It's easier to heal, in fact. I mean, the long rest alone is a big thing in 5th edition that was never there before. I am beaten to within an inch of my life. I have 1 hit point left.
I'm suddenly healed.
I had a nice night's sleep. I took some NyQuil, little gash, it just healed up.
Yep, exactly.
Not even any stitches there. Almost got infected, but I napped.
Yeah, I took a quick nap and everything healed. I'm Wolverine.
Yeah, you are basically Wolverine as a player character in 5th edition.
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily complaining about this, but I will admit it took some time for me to get used to as a DM. I'm like, well, that's lame. Where's the resource management that's involved in healing? But I think it's good. Again, by default, the safety's on. By default, it's a heroic game. And if you want it to be grittier, you can make that adjustment.
For sure.
This is good for entry-level players, and it might be one reason why 5th edition is so popular with new players.
Yeah, for sure.
So, we know what the action economy is now, what to do about it. We've already touched on this, but don't throw a solo big bad against your players if you're intending that to be a dramatic, big, difficult fight, which a lot of times you are by bringing in one badass monster.
Right. What max for a big monster? You're getting maybe 5 actions in a turn,
something like that.
And if you're saying your players are level 5, each player gets a action, bonus action, reaction, which can all do damage, and then also a lot of the martial classes, or all the martial classes, get a second attack in there. So add in 3-4 more, and your big bad turns into pulp real fast. A really easy way to do this and change this is to add minions. Couple little goblins along with the Goblin King will make a huge difference.
There you go. And I'm going to mention Flea Mortals again because I think that book does a great job of giving you options to do this. It explicitly has relationships like that, several types of goblins, and then you can dial the encounter up or down based on how you put them together. You can also do it in Rules as Written, Monster Manual, or Monsters of the Multiverse, just by adjusting that CR. Let's say you've got a party of 4 5th level players, and you want to have a dramatic scene with them, not really ready for a big bad at 5th level, but the equivalent, a boss, I'll say, a boss monster.
Yeah.
Dial it down to a 4 CR boss monster and throw what is that? 1/4 each for orcs? I forget.
Yeah, something
That many
real
orcs
low,
in there.
Yeah.
You're gonna pack a lot in there at a CR5 equivalent.
Yeah.
And they can harry the players. They can tie up the ranged players in close combat. There's a lot you can do. Put spellcasters at disadvantage for ranged attacks by threatening their square.
Well, I mean, I can think of a specific situation from one of my games that I've been in fighting a pack of gnolls. 3 players fighting 10 gnolls. We got our butts kicked.
Was that the Strahd game? Did that happen in the Strahd game?
No, that's the Sunday game.
Oh, okay.
That was when we
don't
were in
know
the
that.
Underdark.
Oh, yes. Yeah. That was a good day for me. And another thing I think is often overlooked, we talked about it with the action economy already, but also for these boss monster challenges, it adds to the drama and it ties the players up, and that is using the environment, having threats in the environment, tangling vines that are there to grab them and restrain them and hold them in place.
Yeah.
Which makes me think of Baldur's Gate 3.
Oh, yeah.
Makes me angry.
The number of times
Oh,
that,
man.
yeah.
Baldur's
Horrible.
Gate 3 does
Horrible.
actually is an example of environment being used really well.
Yes, for sure. The gas traps, the exploding traps, the tangled vines, all the things that make your fighting a little bit more difficult just by being in that environment.
Yeah, that's a good point about traps, because kind of the stereotype of traps is that it's an encounter of its own. You put one maybe in a junction between 2 caverns in a dungeon. Like, ha ha! The players are going to get hit with poison needles. But there's also nothing wrong with having traps right there in the boss fight. The boss might know about them and is able to trigger them for a
Right.
point.
Again, I can think of another game that I've been in where there was a trap connected to a huge statue that completely transformed the battlefield once it went off, actually trapping one of the players underneath it. So that's one of those things that you can still add to really amp up your battles.
Yeah. In general, get creative.
Yeah.
Find ways to put more actions and attacks, frankly, that threaten the player in the battle, whether it's minions or environmental or some other cool idea that you have. And if you do have a cool idea like that, leave it in the comments. Give us ideas that we can use.
Exactly.
And also tell us what you think of these ideas, ways that you've dealt with these problems when they've come up in your games.
Yeah. And if you forget about them in your games, save them and use them later.
Always. Yeah. I can't stress that enough. When you're a DM, you can change the world behind the curtain. Players will not know. Things are always adjustable.
No.
Pull something out of your butt today. That's a bumper sticker
Yes. Yeah.
with a D&D logo with the ampersand. Pull something out of your butt today, DM,
Yes.
and the little
Yep.
D&D ampersand. And,
I'll totally put that on Big Red.
and then whoever buys D&D from Hasbro will sue us into oblivion.
Exactly. Yes.
All right.
The dragon ampersand has
All
to be
right.
happening.
Well, that wraps it up for this video. And as always, may all your 20s be natural.
Hey, thanks for watching this video. Of course, it always helps us out if you like and subscribe. And check this video's description for a link to a few other cool things from Game Talk Network. Links to other channels in the Game Talk Network, like the Board Game Rundown, the Miniatures Rundown, and the Lorcana Rundown. A link to our Patreon for the Game Talk Network, where RPG Rundown is one of the pledge levels you can select. And a link to our GTN Discord server. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.